Imagine two peas in a pod, but one waving an American flag, the other a student visa. That's Miguel and Mateo. Born minutes apart, they shared everything. The same goofy grin, the same love for soccer, even the same messy bedroom growing up. But their lives took different paths after high school. Miguel, grounded by a deep connection to his hometown, became a carpenter. Mateo, always dreaming of faraway lands, secured a student visa to study engineering. Despite the miles that sometimes separated them, their bond remained unbreakable. They talked every week, sharing laughter, worries, and dreams. Little did they know, a simple drive home one evening would turn their world upside down, testing not only their bond, but also their faith in the system. This is the story of how a broken taillight led to an unimaginable nightmare. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Miguel drove Mateo home from soccer practice. Mateo, always the more energetic of the two, chattered about a new play he'd been working on. Miguel, content to listen, smiled. He loved these moments, the easy camaraderie that came so naturally between them. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights filled the rearview mirror. Miguel sighed, pulling over to the side of the road. A police officer approached, his face grim. "License and registration, please," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. Miguel complied, handing over the documents. "Your taillight's out, sir," the officer stated flatly. "Just a warning this time." But then, another car pulled up, two IC agents stepping out. The air immediately grew thick with tension. This simple traffic stop was about to become anything but. One of the IC agents, a tall woman with a stern expression, approached Miguel's window. "Do you mind telling me what your citizenship status is, sir?" she asked, her eyes narrowed. Miguel, confused, replied, "I'm a U.S. citizen, born and raised right here." The agent then turned her attention to Mateo. "And you?" she inquired. Mateo, a little nervous, answered truthfully, "I'm here on a student visa." The agent's eyes flickered between the two brothers, a hint of suspicion creeping into her gaze. "You two look exactly alike," she stated, her voice laced with doubt. "How can I be sure you're telling the truth?" The air in the car grew heavy, the casual conversation replaced by a palpable sense of unease. The twins exchanged worried glances. This was going to be more complicated than they ever imagined. "We have our IDs," Miguel stated, his voice now firm, trying to keep the rising anxiety at bay. He reached for his wallet and handed over his driver's license to the agent. Mateo followed suit, carefully presenting his passport and student visa. The agent examined the documents slowly, her expression unreadable. She held the license up to Miguel's face, then back to the license. "This says Miguel Alvarez," she said, her gaze piercing. Then she looked at Mateo's documents. "And this says Mateo Alvarez. Same last name, same birthday. It's convenient, isn't it?" Mateo tried to explain. "We're twins, that's why." But the agent seemed unmoved. The other agent joined them, peering into the car, adding to the already suffocating feeling. The twins felt trapped, their identities suddenly under intense scrutiny. "I don't believe you," the first agent declared, her voice cold and unwavering. "These documents could be fake. We see this all the time." Miguel's frustration boiled over. "This is ridiculous. I lived here my whole life. Ask anyone in town, they'll tell you who I am." Mateo, usually calm and collected, felt a surge of panic. His visa was valid, his paperwork was in order, but the agent's skepticism was relentless. "Please, officer," he pleaded, "I can show you my university ID, my enrollment papers." The second agent cut him off. "Enough," he said, his hand resting on his holster. "We're going to have to take you both in for questioning." Miguel and Mateo stared at each other in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. A broken taillight had somehow spiraled into a complete nightmare. "You can't do this," Miguel protested, his voice rising in desperation. "I have rights. I'm an American citizen." The agents ignored him, instructing them to step out of the car. Mateo, his face pale, followed Miguel's lead. The agents handcuffed them both, the cold metal biting into their wrists. "What about my car?" Miguel asked, his voice tight with anger. "It'll be impounded," one of the agents replied curtly. As they were led towards the IC vehicle, Miguel saw a small camera attached to one of the agents' uniforms. A bodycam. He hoped, with a desperate flicker of hope, that it was recording everything. Maybe, just maybe, the truth would come out. But right now, all he felt was fear and a profound sense of injustice. They were being taken away, and nobody seemed to care. The ride to the IC detention center was a blur of flashing lights and silent despair. Miguel and Mateo sat side by side in the back of the vehicle, their hands cuffed, their minds racing. Miguel couldn't understand how this was happening. He was a citizen. He had rights. Why weren't they listening? Mateo, on the other hand, worried about his visa. He had worked so hard to get here to study in this country. Would this detention jeopardize everything he had built? The detention center loomed ahead, a stark and imposing building surrounded by high fences. As they were processed, fingerprinted, and separated, the reality of their situation sank in. They were trapped, victims of a system that seemed to value suspicion over truth. The nightmare had only just begun. Days turned into an agonizing week. Inside the detention center, Miguel and Mateo felt lost and helpless. But unbeknownst to them, their fate was about to change. A whistleblower within the ICE agency, appalled by what she witnessed, leaked the bodycam footage from the traffic stop to a local news outlet. The footage was raw and damning. It showed the agents' initial skepticism, their dismissive attitude towards the twins' IDs, and their blatant disregard for Miguel's claims of citizenship and Mateo's valid visa. The camera captured every word, every gesture, every moment of injustice. It was undeniable proof that something had gone terribly wrong. This footage was about to become their lifeline. The most damning part of the bodycam footage was the moment when the first agent, staring directly into the camera, said they're lying. "I can tell. They think they're so clever. Try and pull one over on us." The statement, spoken with such conviction, revealed a deep-seated bias and a complete disregard for the evidence presented. This single sentence became a rallying cry. It encapsulated the injustice, the prejudice, and the sheer absurdity of the situation. It was a clear indication that the agents had made up their minds before even considering the facts. This accusation, caught on camera, would soon ignite a firestorm of public outrage. The twins, unknowingly, were about to become symbols of a much larger struggle. The internet exploded. Within hours, the bodycam footage was everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The hashtag #FreeTheTwins trended worldwide. People were outraged. They shared the video relentlessly, commenting on the agents' blatant prejudice and the injustice of the situation. News outlets picked up the story, amplifying the public's anger. Protests erupted outside IC detention centers across the country. People held signs with Miguel and Mateo's faces, demanding their immediate release. The twins, once anonymous, were now the faces of a broken system. The pressure on IC was mounting. They could no longer ignore the growing storm of public condemnation. The tide was turning. Seeing the viral outrage, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, stepped in, offering their legal expertise to Miguel and Mateo. Their lead attorney, Ms. Rodriguez, a fierce advocate for immigrant rights, recognized the complexities of the case. Proving Miguel's citizenship seemed straightforward: birth certificates, school records, testimonies from lifelong neighbors. However, the challenge lay in convincing IC that Mateo's student visa was legitimate and that his detention was unlawful. Ms. Rodriguez knew they had a strong case, especially with the bodycam footage as evidence. But she also understood the uphill battle they faced against a system often resistant to admitting wrongdoing. The legal fight would be long and arduous, but she was determined to fight for the twins' freedom. The legal battle was a whirlwind of court hearings, legal filings, and tense negotiations. Ms. Rodriguez argued passionately for the twins' release, presenting irrefutable evidence of Miguel's citizenship and the validity of Mateo's student visa. She played the bodycam footage for the court, exposing the agents' biased behavior. ICE lawyers, however, remained stubbornly resistant. They argued that the agents had acted within their authority, claiming there was reasonable suspicion to justify the detention. They questioned the authenticity of the twins' documents, despite the evidence to the contrary. The legal arguments were complex, the stakes were high, and the twins' future hung in the balance. Each day in detention felt like an eternity as they waited anxiously for news. Back in their hometown, the community rallied around the twins. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers organized protests outside the local IC office. They carried signs proclaiming justice for Miguel and Mateo and end IC discrimination. A local church organized a fundraising drive to help cover the twins' legal expenses. People baked cookies, washed cars, and held yard sales, donating every penny to the cause. A petition demanding their release garnered thousands of signatures. The outpouring of support was overwhelming, a testament to the twins' character and the community's belief in their innocence. This collective effort provided a beacon of hope amidst the darkness of their detention. They were not alone. For Mateo, the constant fear wasn't just about his immediate freedom, but also the long-term consequences for his education. He worried incessantly about his student visa. Would his university revoke it? Would he be barred from ever returning to the United States to complete his degree? He spent sleepless nights imagining his dreams slipping away. The engineering career he had worked so hard for vanishing before his eyes. He shared his fears with Ms. Rodriguez during their brief meetings, and she reassured him that they were doing everything they could to protect his visa status. However, the uncertainty weighed heavily on him, adding another layer of stress to an already unbearable situation. The detention was threatening not only his present, but also his future. While Mateo battled anxiety, Miguel simmered with righteous anger. He couldn't shake the feeling of being violated, his fundamental rights as an American citizen trampled upon. He replayed the traffic stop in his mind, again and again, each time feeling the sting of the handcuffs and the humiliation of being treated like a criminal. The fact that his citizenship was questioned, despite his lifetime of living and working in the United States, felt deeply personal and insulting. He channeled his frustration into helping Ms. Rodriguez gather evidence, determined to prove his innocence and hold those agents accountable. He vowed that this would never happen to anyone else, not if he could help it. He felt like his country had betrayed him. After weeks of agonizing uncertainty, the news finally arrived. Ms. Rodriguez called, her voice filled with relief. "They're releasing you both," she announced. Effective immediately. Miguel and Mateo were stunned. The judge, swayed by the overwhelming evidence and public pressure, had ordered their release. The moment they walked out of the detention center, blinking in the sunlight, was surreal. A crowd of supporters cheered, waving signs and chanting their names. They were greeted with hugs, tears, and a sense of overwhelming joy. They were finally free. The nightmare was over, or so they thought. The road to recovery was just beginning. Surprisingly, ICE never issued a formal apology. The agency released a brief statement acknowledging the twins' release, but stopped short of admitting any wrongdoing. They claimed the agents had acted in good faith, based on the information available at the time. The lack of an apology stung. It felt like a slap in the face, a refusal to take responsibility for their actions. Miguel, in particular, was incensed. He felt that an apology was the bare minimum they deserved. Mateo, though disappointed, was more focused on rebuilding his life. He knew that an apology wouldn't erase what had happened, but it would have been a sign of accountability. The silence from IC spoke volumes. The scars of their detention ran deep. Miguel struggled with nightmares, reliving the traffic stop and the feeling of helplessness. He became hypervigilant, constantly scanning his surroundings, wary of law enforcement. He found it difficult to trust authority figures. His faith in the system shattered. Mateo, though outwardly calmer, battled anxiety. He jumped at loud noises and avoided crowded places. He worried that people were judging him, questioning his right to be in the country. Both twins found it difficult to talk about their experience, the trauma too raw and painful. They sought therapy, hoping to heal the invisible wounds of their unjust detention. The experience had changed them forever. The public outcry didn't end with the twins' release. Instead, it intensified, focusing on holding the ICE agents accountable for their actions. Civil rights organizations and legal advocates demanded a formal investigation into the agents' conduct, calling for disciplinary action and policy changes to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. Petitions circulated, urging ICE to fire the agents involved. Protests were organized outside ICE offices, with demonstrators chanting slogans demanding justice and accountability. Ms. Rodriguez vowed to pursue legal action against the agents, seeking damages for the twins' wrongful detention and emotional distress. The fight for justice was far from over. The demand for accountability echoed across the nation. The twins' case sparked a national conversation about ICE practices and policies. While sweeping reforms were slow to materialize, some positive changes did emerge. ICE implemented new training programs for agents, focusing on cultural sensitivity and proper identification procedures. The agency also revised its policy on detaining individuals based solely on perceived immigration status, requiring agents to have concrete evidence before making an arrest. These changes, though incremental, were a direct result of the twins' ordeal and the public outcry that followed. They represented a small step towards a more just and equitable immigration system, proving that even in the face of adversity, change is possible. The twins' suffering had not been in vain. In the years that followed, Miguel and Mateo dedicated themselves to advocating for immigration reform. They shared their story at community meetings, schools, and even at a congressional hearing, their voices amplified by the injustice they had endured. Mateo, after overcoming his initial anxieties, returned to university and completed his engineering degree. He became a vocal advocate for immigrant rights on campus, determined to create a more welcoming and inclusive environment. Miguel continued his work as a carpenter, using his skills to build homes for low-income families. He also became a citizen advocate, helping others navigate the complex immigration system. Together, they transformed their personal tragedy into a powerful force for change, ensuring that their voices would never be silenced. Their future was one of hope, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice.